Can you hear me through the microphone? Welcome to the class that I have in my head been calling the flag class. But its official title, let me put my glasses on, is History's Mysteries as Told by the Flags of America, 1770s through 1960s. My name is Helen Klein. I am the course coordinator. The course is going to be presented to us by Robert Williamson, who is the director and founder of the House of Flags Museum in Columbus, North Carolina. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would somebody from North Carolina come to Holland, Michigan to present, especially the director of a museum?
There's detours on 194.
Somehow we flashed them off. But at any rate, the answer to that question lets me tell a story and make a point. The story is this. Trish Williamson, who's sitting in the back, and is the sister-in-law of Robert, and I volunteered last fall to upload videos to YouTube from all the Zoom classes and that sort of thing. And we got together at the outset of that and discussed how we were going to do it and what our naming standards would be and that sort of thing. And she mentioned her brother-in-law in the Flag Museum. And I said, holy smoke, what a great class for HASP. So that's the story. And my point, the point I want to make is this. We have 700 plus members in HASP. They all have friends and relatives. And in that vast array of people, there are those who are experts in fields, who are hobbyists, who have had great work experience, who could bring that to a HASP class. As a member of a curriculum committee, I know it's hard to find people to talk about things. But when you find somebody that's passionate about something, you know, think about that in your daily wanderings. And if you come across something and think about somebody, get a hold of Sharon Aronson. Oh my God, I'm not going to come up with all the names, but you can just write to hasp@hope.edu and that'll get passed along to us and we can maybe do something with it. So, okay, that said, sorry to take up that time. Robert Williamson, as I said, is the director and was the founder of the House of Flags Museum in Columbus, North Carolina. He is an expert. He is known throughout the country. He has actually trained people at the Nixon and Reagan presidential museums.
Right.
And so, you know, he's really known throughout the country. Besides that, though, he lives in Columbus, North Carolina. He's a native of Michigan. He went to Ferris and the University of Michigan, where he got degrees in teaching, vocational administration,
yep,
right?
Right.
He's subsequently taught at Northwestern Michigan College and Dayton, the University of Dayton, and he's acted as an advisor to industry. So he's got a very wide breadth of experience here. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's got to be one of the best introductions I've ever had, short of my mother. So Helen, thank you for that. I appreciate it. So we're going to have fun with flags today. I couldn't bring all my flags. We have over 300 flags on display in the museum, and that's the outside of our building in Columbus, North Carolina. We're one of 23 Columbuses in the United States. We're the only one not named after Christopher Columbus. We're named after Senator Columbus Mills. So our town has the first name of the senator that founded our town in 1855. So the Flag Museum started on September 8th, grand opening September 8th, 2001, 3 days before the terrorist attacks. It was actually founded by George Schofield, who would sit outside an old building 13 miles from town for 2 hours on every Saturday and hope people would come to look at his flags. Well, I got involved through my wife, knowing George through the ice cream shop that we ran. Says, why don't you make some signs for his flags? So I started making signs for the flags and Deb helped make a guidebook. So I learned flags. But I was asked a question earlier, how did you get so excited about flags? Well, I have a picture in the museum. I'm 2 years old, wearing a little suit with shorts and a coat made by my mother, next to my grandfather, who looked like a giant next to me. And we're standing next to an 8 or 9 foot American flag hanging on Chicago Boulevard in Tecumseh, Michigan. And that picture, to me, tells it all. I had a love for flags all my life. but not like this. It's like, holy crow, this is amazing. So my grandfather would say, when my dad said, why are you flying the flag today? It's not Decoration Day. It's not 4th of July. It's not Veterans Day. My grandfather would say, any day's Flag Day. And that stuck with me. Any day's Flag Day. So I've had fun with flags for quite a few years, and it's been an interesting ride. I'll tell you more about the presidential libraries and museums as we get to that chapter in today. Everybody get a handout, I hope. So this pretty much follows the order of the flags I'm going to talk about. It's got the basic information, room to make notes if you want to make notes, or just doodle. It's your choice. Where did this come from? You know, and we'll start out by saying, how did we get this red, white, and blue thing with stars that we call our national flag? Its official name is not the American flag. There's no such thing as an American flag. It's the flag of the United States of America. And the flag resolution says the flag of the United States shall be 13 alternating red and white stripes with 13 stars, white on a field of blue, representing a new constellation. So keep that in mind, because that story comes up as we go through the flag story this morning. Colonial America, British colonies, a lot of the flags had the King's colors. And when we look at the King's colors, this is my Van White pose. So the King's colors is what we call the union of the flag or the canton of the flag. This is a British red ensign that in Massachusetts, they put Liberty and Union on here. So this is about 1774. Now the Union thing comes from the French and Indian War, join or die, union or die, work together, or we could be speaking French today. So the Liberty and Union was boiling up because of King George III in Parliament taxing our tea and taxing our stamps and taxing our paper and trying us in absentia in the British courts. So there's a sentiment that, we're really not free. We're under the King's thumb. So this started popping up. This was in 1774 on a British red ensign. The red ensign is a naval flag. Okay, let's put him over here. So the very first flag of the colonies is what we call the Grand Union flag, which looks suspiciously like the British red ensign, but it has stripes now. So the story that we're told, and again, there was no internet back then, so we're reading letters and we're looking at paintings and artist renderings and stuff. But the story was told that right around 1775, somebody sewed 6 white stripes on a British red ensign, which gives us 6 white stripes and 7 red stripes, which gives us 13 stripes for the 13 British colonies in colonial America. So this is the Grand Union flag, the first flag of the British colonies. So we look at the Union Jack in the corner. It's called the Union Jack. It's the King's colors. And very quickly, this can go on for 4 hours. I'm going to try to hold it in an hour and a half. But the red cross is St. George's cross. So the flag of England is St. George's cross. The flag that the Mayflower would have had on it wouldn't have been a military flag. It would have been a white flag with a red cross on it, St. George's cross. The other cross is the diagonal, and that's St. Andrew's cross from Scotland. So when England and Scotland joined together, that became the United Kingdom flag. So it's referred to as the King's colors in this use here. Later years, Ireland joined, so there would be another red cross here, a narrow red cross, and that's the cross of St. Patrick of Ireland. And the flag of Great Britain today has that third cross on it. So you got cross of St. George, cross of St. Andrews, and St. Patrick's cross on the new flag. But I thought it was very inventive that the colonials realized they could take the red ensign and sew 6 white stripes on it and make a unique flag representing the 13 colonies. They're creative. Let me say one thing now to the audience at home and as well as you. If you have questions along the way, please feel free to ask. And we'll try not to get a long answer to a short question. And if I don't know, I'll make something up.
Well, can I pose a question?
Yes.
The term Union Jack.
Yes.
What's the Jack?
It's this corner of the flag. So the jack staff is the very front of a ship. So the flag they fly there is this portion of the flag. So in this case, the jack of this, the naval jack, would be the blue and with white stars. So that'd be flown on the jack staff of the ships. British ships would fly this. The ensign is flown on the aft when it's in port. And there are other uses of flags we'll get into. We talk about president's flags. So the jack is just this portion of the flag. Okay, so moving right along. I don't tell the kindergartners to come through the museum this, but I tell the other grade schoolers that Betsy Ross really did not make the first flag. I'm sorry. So, you know, we were, oh, did I burst some bubbles? Do you need CPR? Yeah. So this was supposed to be fun with flags. So please, you know, revive him. Yeah. So Betsy Ross did make flags. She was on Arch Street in Philadelphia. She was an upholsteress, a seamstress. They ran an upholstery shop. So yeah, she did make flags. But there's these paintings that were done sometimes later where she's sitting at George Washington's bended knee, showing a flag with 13 stars and all that stuff. And that's not real. So, and even her great-grandson told a story in 1876 about his great-grandmother, Elizabeth Ross. And the family legend was she made the first flag for George Washington in 1776. At the end of that book, and at the end of that speech to Congress, he said, "We have no proof. It's a family legend." Well, when we teach that in schools, well, maybe not. When we teach that to little kids and write books, we leave that last part out because it's kind of romantic that Betsy Ross did this. You can do this too. So that's the I call it a myth, and you'll see that I put a family myth in there in the notes about the Betsy Ross flag when we get to that. That's after this flag. So the flag resolution was June 14th, Flag Day, 1777. So in 1776, she probably didn't know what the flag looked like, nor did George Washington, because the flag was designed by the Maritime Committee in Congress because the ships at sea, the ships at war needed to have a flag of the country of origin. So our newly formed government in 1777 needed a national flag to fly on our warships and the ships of trade. So the first flag was designed by Francis Hopkinson. And this is called the Hopkinson Flag. And what's unique about the Hopkinson flag is the 6 pointed stars. Now, Francis Hopkinson was a member of Congress. He helped design the Great Seal of the United States of America. And he was a frustrated artist and poet and all that stuff. So this is his flag. What I like about this flag, if you look at the Union, the stars are in a row from corner to corner and also horizontal and vertical. They match the geometry of the King's colors. So we're still, you know, we're realizing we were British subjects. We were colonial America as far as the British colonies, but we're not quite there yet. This is what we call a transition flag, our first flag with that geometry of the Union Jack, the King's colors. Well, how do we know this about Francis Hopkinson? He was a signer of the Declaration. He's a member of Congress. Well, naturally, he submitted a bill to Congress for the materials to make the first flag, for the needles, the thread, and the material to make the first flags, which Congress denied and said, no, you're a member of Congress. Thank you for donating your time making the first flag. So he submitted the bill again, to which they denied for the same reason. And this is all in congressional record. The third bill he submitted, he said, okay, I'll take a half cask of public wine. To which Congress said, nah, you're on your own. No, thank you very much. So there's some sketchy records in the congressional record from 1777 and 1778 about Francis Hopkinson designing this first flag. Now you notice I hung it different than when I was displaying it over here. So when you hang a flag vertical, the Star Union is on the flag's right. So it looks like our left, but we always refer to the direction of flag as the flag's right. So when you look at flags on a stage, it's at the flag's right where you see the US flag. And the left would be the state flag, the church flag, or whatever. So everything we talk about the flag direction is from the flag's perspective. I'm the flag, this is my right. So that's why I hung it this way. So when flags are flying on a pole, and this is the Betsy Ross flag. Again, notice the Union is on its right. And the direction of travel is that way. So this is the way it would fly on a flagpole. This is Betsy Ross flag. According to legend, it was a circle of 13 stars, which indicates no beginning or no end. There's no one state that's more or less important than any other of the first 13 states. The 13 stripes, and a lot of people talk about the stripes represent the 13 colonies. No, they don't. They represent the first 13 states. So the 13 colonies would be the continental colors. So this would be the 13 colonies with the British Jack. So now when we get to this flag, these are the 13 states. So it represents the first 13 states. So Betsy Ross's claim to fame, according to legend and coloring books and kindergarten books, is she's able to cut a 5-pointed star with one snip. It works. Look it up. Google it. Whatever you use, look at it. How to cut a 5-pointed star with one snip. It's all in how you fold the paper. So when kindergartners and grade schoolers come through, we cut stars. And it gives you a perfect star. It also gives you a stencil to make star prints too. So it's fun. You can cut a star. Don't try it now. You leave your scissors at home. So this is Betsy Ross. And what I like about the legend is it got kids interested in the flag early on. Kids learned that, the flag is made. It's not born. It's not hatched. It's not produced by government. It is our flag. And it tells a story about George Washington, our first commander-in-chief and our first president. Yes, ma'am.
So Betsy Ross didn't make the flag. Who made that flag?
Well, okay, let me tell the rest of Betsy Ross' story. So she didn't make the first flag. The question was, and I'll repeat, the question was, if Betsy Ross didn't make the first flag, who made this flag? Well, Betsy Ross probably made this flag, or one like this. This is not hers. Because there is lots of records that she and her husband made dozens of flags for the US government. They were flag makers extraordinaire in Philadelphia. So they made flags. They were known for making flags, but not in 1776.
Is that her design?
Apparently, yes. Yeah. And all we know about that is the legend that was told by her great grandson and written in books and told at the speech in Congress, that her claim to fame was she and George, because they were family friends, decided to have a circle of 13 stars. So no one was more important than the other. But yeah, she was a flag maker. Yes.
But
Yeah.
As a historian, wouldn't you say that it's most probably a woman who made the first flag? Because I'm starting to get angry that you're taking that
Well,
historical fact away from women.
yeah, well, and that's it, and it's a family legend. That's all I can say is when her grandson told the story, he said, "We have no proof. It is a family legend." So that's why I don't tell it to kindergartners and young kids. We let them have that. So I'm not gonna tell part of history that, yeah. But what we do know is Francis Hopkinson submitted a bill when he made the first flag. We have evidence of that. What we don't have is evidence that Betsy Ross made the flag. So I get your point, but as a historian, this is what the records say.
So Hopkins designed it, but Betsy Ross may have made it. Is that right?
Not according to the bill that was submitted. So Betsy Ross at that time there's no record of Betsy Ross, Elizabeth Ross, having any connection to Congress in 1777. No connection. So the family story, and it is a story, says that her family was a friend of George Washington. I don't know that to be fact or fiction. So I won't tell that. I'll just tell what I know about flags. As disappointing or whatever it is, that's That's my story and I'm sticking to it. So this is my flag journey is a lot like crime scene investigation. I look for the evidence. And it's very easy when you research anything on the internet to say, oh, that's what happened. That's why it is what it is. Well, Tricia tells a story about tree whales. Well, tree whales, yeah, they're in northern Michigan someplace, and you can find all kinds of stuff on the internet. So what I try to do is look for original text. And that's why I've spent lots of times Library of Congress, presidential libraries, museums, pulling out archive boxes and files and looking for evidence in 1872 books, the diverse chronicle of the US flag, to find out, what was the contemporaneous information and how did that morph? A lot of our flags have been hijacked. The meaning has been hijacked, and we'll get to that when we get to the Confederate flags tomorrow. Some of our flags, the original meaning is lost. Not the US flags. So the original meaning is lost for certain flags because they were used for an alternative purpose. So getting back to, thank you for that question, by the way. So this one is probably our most famous flag in US history. This flag, above all others, tells a story. This flag is the Star-Spangled Banner. That Francis Scott Key, on the morning of September 14th, 1814, at dawn's early light, saw that our flag was still there and wrote a four-stanza poem that turned into our national anthem. So how do I know this is our Star-Spangled Banner? It's the only flag in our history that has more than 13 stripes. So when Kentucky and Vermont joined the Union, Congress added 2 more stars and 2 more stripes. Imagine what that would look like today. Now, it's easy to spot because the blue Union is resting on a red stripe, where the other flags, the blue Union is resting on a white stripe. So I have seen internet evidence of a flag with a white stripe here being hailed as the Star-Spangled Banner, and a flag with 13 stripes being hailed as the Star-Spangled Banner. And yes, it has 15 stars, but it should have 15 stripes to be the Star-Spangled Banner. How many knew that before they came in here? All one of you, yeah. It's so interesting because I've told this story for over a decade now, that we don't really look, we pay attention to the details of our flag. It's just red, white, and blue, and stripes and stars, and yeah, okay. But the history behind this flag, what happened in the War of 1812, our second war for independence, what Francis Scott Key saw on that dreary morning after 27 hours of bombardment, thunder, lightning, rainstorms, brutal conditions, at dawn's early light, it's like everything went calm. And he got back up on deck of this British ship and looked out there. Our flag is still there. So this is, I'm considering this the most important, the most historic flag in our history, our second war for independence. The Star-Spangled Banner. So in our museum, all the flags are displayed flat on the walls. So it takes up a lot of wall space in a 6,000 square foot museum. Fortunately, we have a lot of wall space, so we can display them that way rather than on a pole. When you put a flag on a pole, you really can't see it. And most of the times we see a flag in public, it's on a pole. So in the case of the Star-Spangled Banner on a pole, you wouldn't know if that was a 15 star, 15 stripe, because it's hanging like this. So this is a unique flag. This flag dates to 1818. Now, 1818 was the year we went from a 15 star, 15 stripe flag back to a 13 stripe, 20 star flag. So Congress wrestled with this. We got 5 states joining. 5 states joined. Do we add 5 more stars and 5 more stripes? So there was a subcommittee of the House of Representatives meeting to write the flag resolution draft, and they wrestled with it through 2 sessions, 2 congressional sessions. They wrestled with this. There was a suggestion in Congress at that time to go back to 13 stars, 13 stripes as our flag, and don't change it when states join. So the changing when states joined happened when Kentucky and Vermont joined. And you can see, well, we're adding more. Well, not too many more. So in the second session of Congress, Captain Samuel Chester Reed, who was a captain during the War of 1812, said, well, why don't we use 13 stripes to represent the 13 states, the original 13 states, and add a star for every state? To which Congress said, that has got to be the stupidest idea we've ever heard. When they came back, they said, you know, that's the only kind of sensible idea we've ever come up with. So it's Congress. I'm sorry. It's 1818. So Captain Reed convinced them that the best thing to do was to, if we're adding stars, add a star for every state on July 4th in the year after they joined the Union, and stick with 13 stripes. You had a question. You need a microphone.
Just what was his first name? Captain Reed.
Samuel Chester Reed. Captain Samuel Chester Reed was the name. Tricia.
What happened to the six-pointed star?
What happened to six-pointed stars? Well, they kind of fell out of favor for some reason, and I don't know. I've not found any documentation that said, why did we go from Francis Hopkinson? I like the six-pointed stars. But in heraldry, there's no rules of stars. They're called mullets. So the heraldry term is a mullet. So how many points in a mullet? Well, on our flags, we have 5-pointed stars, 6-pointed stars, 7-pointed stars, and 8-pointed stars in our history. So until 1912, the birth of our 48-star flag, there were no rules on flag proportions and ratios and sizes and all this kind of stuff. So when you look at the flag resolutions, the newer ones talk about 5-pointed stars on a field of blue, and they talk about the ratio proportion of the union, the canton of the flag to the width and the length of the flag. And that all took place in 1912. So something happened. And maybe we attribute that to Betsy Ross because she's known for cutting 5-pointed stars with a single snip. Pardon me?
Maybe it was efficiency. One snip and you got a star. Why cut
But it's the
six-pointed stars?
folding. Try it. I mean, when you go home in your leisure, look it up how to do it. It's tedious to fold it just right and to cut it just right to get the star the size you want. It's tedious. So 6-point star is geometry. I mean, it's 8th grade geometry.
But that has religious significance. That's what I'm thinking.
The 5-pointed star,
No,
the 6-pointed stars. With the Star of David, it could be, and I don't know. I've not found any evidence of that. So some parts of our flags have kind of morphed. This is called the Great Star Flag that Samuel Chester Reed designed as an example of a 20 star flag with 13 stripes. So there are no rules about the arrangement of stars. This is the Great Star pattern, which is kind of cool. So Samuel Chester Reed was a sea captain and kind of a frustrated flag designer. So in researching in the Library of Congress, I found a sketch that he'd done in 1851, well after 1818, to his son, a letter to his son that sketched, here's the first flag I designed. So he designed this flag as the standard of the Union to be used not as the national flag, but as a standard. So when the president comes on board ship or president comes to a post or what, this would be the flag you fly. Historically significant, I would call this the first kind of presidential flag because you've got the eagle, the coat of arms down there. You've got stripes here and you've got Lady Liberty with Liberty Cap. We'll talk about that tomorrow. But here's the Great Star design that ended up in this flag. So flag makers picked up on that Great Star design and made these for a while after 1818, which is an interesting flag. So no rules. There were no rules at this time about a 5-pointed star, 8-pointed star. There's no governmental rules on the star patterns. So all of the flags in our museum in the USA room, we've adopted the naval pattern. So it's parallel rows of stars. So when you look back in history, I mean, there were all kinds of star arrangements. So this flag flew at Fort Sumter during the start of the Civil War. This is the 31-star flag, known as the Fort Sumter flag. And it's kind of a unique design. It's got kind of a diamond shape in the middle, and it's got in four corners, it's got the double stars. But that's what we call the Fort Sumter flag. Again, it's a military design flag, but they got creative. They didn't make it a circle, they didn't make it parallel rows, they made it that diamond with the double stars in the corners. So again, with no rules, you end up with some interesting flags. So there's a couple, the Masti flag collection, which has been dispersed and sold at auction. This couple in, I believe, New York State, the Masti family, husband and wife, collected flags as folk art. Because when you look at the early American flags, some were star patterns, some were, this is the great circle of 34 stars. This is a great circle flag. There's so many variations. So they collected examples of all the flag designs as folk art. So they've got flags of all sorts, I mean, weird designs from our standard today. But they're really kind of folksy when you look at this. It's like, wow, why did they dream up that? Why did they come up with that for 34 stars? Well, they could, because they could. And the flag manufacturers, I mean, could have been mom and pop down the street. It could have been Betsy Ross. It could have been anybody making flags to suit somebody's pattern. But this is a great circle star, 34 stars. So this would be near the end of the Civil War when Kansas joined. Was unique in that era. Was it a national flag produced by the government? No. The government wouldn't have produced a flag like this. The flag manufacturers sort of take a lead from whoever comes to them and say, I want some flags made. So when I was digging through the Eisenhower library, now President Eisenhower served in the Oval Office as our commander-in-chief and president under the 48-star flag, the 49-star flag, and the 50-star flag, which is kind of unique. So, and I'll tell that story when we get to the president's flags later. But when I was digging through there, it's interesting because when Alaska joined as our 49th state, the flag manufacturers wrote and said, should we stop making 48s and throw them all away and start making 49s? And he said, no. He said, just because we have a new flag, it does not obsolete the old flag. It is still, none of our flags have been obsoleted. Those flag resolutions were never disregarded, never voided. So it's perfectly legal to fly any one of the 27 official US flags today. Perfectly legal. So what Eisenhower told the flag makers is don't make a lot of 49s because Alaska's going to have the 50-star flag in June. Well, what Eisenhower knew that the flag makers maybe didn't know after Alaska joined in January of 1959 was Hawaii is going to join in August of 1959. Both states joined in 59. Politically, to give Alaska their 49-star flag and Hawaii the 50-star flag, they did it on either side of July 4th. Because we get a new flag for the states that joined prior to July 4th. The new flag is issued on July 4th, the year following they're joining the Union. So we got the Alaska flag in July 4th, 1959, because they joined the Union in January 59. And then August 23rd, 59, Hawaii joined. But we didn't get the 50-star flag until July 4th, 1960. So that's why a lot of people think Hawaii joined in 1960. They became a state in 1960. No, it became a state August 23rd, 1959. I don't think I made up the 23rd. I think that's real. So when you look at records like that, the flag makers tried to get ahead of the game. They tried to say, okay, if you're going to issue flags on July 4th, what should it be? So back when the Dakotas joined, and it's interesting because it was supposed to be the state of Dakota. It was a Dakota territory. So something happened. And we ended up with, and we just look at the note of what happened then. 1890, 1891. So before that, Colorado had joined. We had a 38-star flag. All of a sudden, some of the flag makers started making a 39-star flag for Dakota. Well, we have books, we have encyclopedias that printed a 39-star flag as being the next flag after Colorado. Didn't happen. Congress said, no, don't be in a, we're not gonna be in a hurry. So we're gonna divide Dakota into North Dakota and South Dakota. And that happened in 1891. They added Montana, Washington, Idaho in that same year. So it's like, God, if we made 39-star flags, what do we do with all these? Well, they have become very collectible, very collectible. And we've got a 42-star flag in our collection. There never was an official 42-star flag. But and as it being the only house of flag museum in America, people contact us and say, I got this flag that's been in the family attic for generations. Do you want it? Send it on. So they sent a 42-star flag. And I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I realized there was no official 42-star flag. And it's a 10-foot flag. It's an official flag. It's not a knockoff. It is an official flag that some flag manufacturer anticipated a 42nd state 42-star flag. It didn't happen. So flag manufacturers anticipate. Okay. Hi, Tricia. So there's one person in this room who knows what this is, right? Yeah, okay, there's more than one person. Okay, my sister-in-law is from Ohio. She's a Buckeye. We don't hold that against her. But when I take people to the last room in the museum, is called the United States of America room, and we got all 27 official flags around the room, accompanied by the state flags of that era. So when you get to when Ohio joined, there were 5 states that joined, and that was that infamous, we're going from 15 stars to 20. Ohio was one of those. We have 49 state flags and one pennant. Ohio had to be different. Bless their hearts. Pardon me? Yeah, better, different, it's all the same. So this is the Ohio state flag. Now, this was designed by an architect. Ohio had competition in 1901 for the Pan Am exhibition in Buffalo, New York. So the competition was come up with a new state flag to exhibit at the Pan Am exhibition in Buffalo. So lots of designs were submitted. Well, the architect won. Well, he also patented this flag. He got a US patent for this flag well in advance of him submitting this as his application. He didn't want anybody to steal it from him. So when Ohio selected this, he signed the patent over to the state of Ohio. And it's a neat patent certificate. We've got a copy of it in the museum. So I tell people, even though I'm from Michigan, even though I went to the University of Michigan, this is my favorite state flag. I know it pained me. But the significance of this, the geometry of this flag, it's called a burgee, B-U-R-G-E-E. It's a burgee shape, which is a swallowtail pennant. It's a swallowtail pennant. So let me just hook it up here. So it's a swallowtail pennant. It's made kind of like the cavalry flags of the Civil War and the War of 1812 and all that stuff, but it's not square like the cavalry guidon. It's a pennant shape. But I think what attracted the state legislature to this flag was the story that went with the design. And the story goes like this. What do you think this stands for? It looks like an O for Ohio, the first and last letters of the state of Ohio. What do you think this red thing is? Yeah, it's the worthless nut. It's a Buckeye. Isn't that what we learned, Barry, growing up? Yeah, okay. Yeah, Barry's my brother, so. So this is the Buckeye. Now, Ohio was the 17th state. So how many stars do you think are there? 17, but they're in 2 groups. They're 2 clusters, 13 and 4. So this group of 13 represents the first 13 states. And these 4 over here represent Ohio joined as the 17th state. And we're not done. The blue triangle represents the hills and valleys of the state of Ohio. And it goes on. The 5 stripes represent that Ohio was part of the Northwest Territory. Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and Wisconsin. Ohio was one of the 5 Northwest Territories. The highways and byways of Ohio and the 5 Northwest Territories. So this had to really say, I'm an award-winning flag. When you have a flag that tells a story like that about your state, this is important. And it's easy for kids to learn that in school. You're learning about something important about your state's history as told by your flag. And one of the things I tell tourists through our flag museum is every flag has a story to tell. Every flag has a story to tell. Some are, how in the world they come up with that? And some are like this one, very interesting, very meaningful. So it's the only flag in the world of a sovereign nation, country, or state that is this shape. Tibet is similar, but Tibet is called the most mathematical flag. If you want to Google something and look at a story on how they designed the Tibet flag, how the monks designed it, it will blow your mathematical mind. The most mathematical flag. So it's kind of a burgy shape, but it's pointed down. I mean, it's angled down. It's a very unusual shaped flag, but technically this is the only one shaped like this in the world. So congratulations, Ohio. So it kind of has no front, no back. It's ambidextrous. I mean, looks this way, it looks this way. Now the Scout Council, Boy Scout, I think it was a Boy Scout Council, it may have been just the Scout Council in Ohio, came up with a way to fold it. And I think it's 17 folds. And it folds up in a little packet like this. I have tried and tried and tried to follow those instructions to fold the Ohio flag and have not mastered that yet. It's a challenging flag to fold. Now our flag is folded. We can fold our flag in the triangle shape. And we've seen that at funerals, military funerals. And it's folded in that triangle shape for why? Why do we settle on that triangle shape? Anybody know why we folded it as a triangle instead of a square tablet? Hat. Yeah, the tricorn hat, the colonial tricorn hat was shaped like this. So that's why we fold our flag in that shape. So legend has it. There is no governmental standard story for that. Okay, my other favorite flag is North Carolina. That's just the Michigan flag. Hey, okay, I'm sorry. Well, there's a story about that flag too. So in North Carolina, interesting flag. Our first flag, and we'll see that tomorrow, our first flag in the state of North Carolina was the flag of secession. When North Carolina seceded from the Union on May 20th, 1861, that was the first flag of the state. Most states didn't have flags until the Civil War, when they sent troops off to war. Or an event like the Pan Am exhibition, where Ohio had a flag designed just for that exhibition. Utah had a flag designed for that exhibition. It was designed wrong. It was a wrong flag for 85 years, and they finally rectified that after 85 years, but that's another story. So our current flag, so you think our first flag was May 20th, 1861. Civil War broke out, ended in 1865. We didn't get our current flag until 1885. So the South was going through rebuilding. The flag was the last thing in your mind. You know, we needed a new flag. It probably never came up. It's not an issue. We're not sending people off to war. We're rebuilding. We're reconstructing after the war between the states, or as they call it down there, the War of Northern Aggression, or the Great Turmoil. So what's interesting about this flag, and very few flags do this, tell the history of the state. So there's the blue flag there, the blue canton, I'll call it, with a white star. That is the Bonnie blue flag, popularized during the Civil War in the South. The Bonnie blue flag was a blue banner with a white star. When Texas became a state, they adopted the Bonnie blue flag with a gold star, the Lone Star State. And that morphed into what we have as the Texas flag today. So this flag of the South, the Southern state, has the Bonnie blue flag, kind of a holdover from the Civil War. We'll see the flag of the Republic of North Carolina tomorrow in the Civil War flags. But there's two important dates on our flag today. The May 20th, 1775 at the top. That's what's called the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. So think back in history. Any real history majors in here? People who really know history, American history? Okay, so I can make something up. Okay. No, I won't. So April 19th or so was the Battle of Lexington and Concord, 1775. Yeah, 1775. So April 19th, 1775 has been talked about, the shot that's heard around the world. That was written afterwards. The local militia was basically attacked by the British troops who marched from Boston to Cambridge, and Old North Bridge and all that stuff. Well, in North Carolina, almost a month later, they authored the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence to secede from under the thumb of King George III in Parliament. They essentially said, we dissolve our bonds between the state of the colony of North Carolina in England. And that's called the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. Historians debate that. This flag allows us to talk about it. So historians debate that fact because they've never found an authentic reproduction or authentic copy of that Mecklenburg Declaration. However, during that week, it was published in 2 newspapers. So how would it be published in 2 newspapers if it didn't exist? Somebody made it up. Okay. That was the Mecklenburg Declaration. Historians have been debating this for 200 years. Does it really exist? But in North Carolina, we say, so we believe it's true. May 20th, in Charlotte, North Carolina, they celebrate Mech Deck Day. Charlotte is in Mecklenburg County. So they celebrate Mech Deck Day, and they'll get in their Revolutionary War regalia and they'll fly their flags and parade through town. The second date, April 12th, 1776, is when we gave our representatives in Congress permission to sign the Declaration of Independence, where the 13 colonies dissolved their bonds with King George III in Parliament. So what I like about the flag is it teaches basic history of North Carolina. It teaches some basic history. Where a lot of state flags are, well, I'll show you the Michigan flag here in a minute. A lot of state flags are the state crest, the state crest. And unless you know the heraldry, the state crest, the coat of arms and stuff like that, you really don't know the significance of what it's saying. So in school, they teach the history of North Carolina, and 2 important dates come up in those discussions about history, and it's reminded on our state flag. So the secession version of this is the same arrangement, but the colors are different. This is red in the secession flag, this is white, and this is red or blue down here. So the colors are different, but it's the same arrangement. And the Revolutionary War flag does not have the April date on it. They put the date of secession. Okay. Now, here's the thing about flags. If I hang it this way, it's backwards. So a lot of flags are what we call double-sided flags. It's a bag. It's a bag. They make a bag. It's the same on both sides. So you can't really display this one this way. This one has to be displayed this way. Now, the good news is when it's flying on a flagpole, we can't tell the difference. Can't tell the difference. Okay, Michigan. So there's the memories I have of this flag is on the side of state troopers' cars when I was growing up learning to drive. Our uncle was a state trooper, and we'd see that blue car with that on the side of it. So it's an elk and a moose. I always thought they were 2 deer, but this is a moose and this is an elk. You got the eagle with E pluribus unum, so out of many one. We've got Tubor, which is Tubor. I don't speak Latin, but anyway, I will protect, or I'll defend. And then we have this Latin down here that I won't even try to pronounce, but it says, if you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. If you seek a pleasant peninsula, look about you. So it's in Latin. So, why do we have Latin on our flags? Well, because this is what I call an SOB. It's a seal on a blanket. It's a state seal on a blanket. So the seal, I'd leave out the A. No. Okay. So anyway, many state flags are just that. It's a state seal or the state coat of arms put on just a banner. It's like, oh, we got to have a flag. Let's use our state seal. And they put it on a banner, or I call a blanket. So the North American Vexillological Association, say that 3 times fast. So Vexillologist is a flag geek. Vexill is Latin for flag or banner, and ology is Greek for study of science. So Vexillologist, a term was invented in 1986 by Whitney Smith, of the original vexillologist in American history. Collected historical flags, and he defined the term vexillologist. Well, the North American Vexillology Association, which are kindred flag geeks, vote these as probably the least descriptive, poorly designed flags in the world. So any flag with a state seal, not this one. The worst one was the Georgia flag from 2001 to 2003. So, but that's another story. So you look at this when it's on a pole. What do you know about that flag? Well, it must be the state flag because it's in front of an official government building in the state of Michigan. That's probably the state flag. The Ohio flag, on the other hand, is very distinctive. It pains me. So most state flags, you don't know what they are unless it's by juxtaposed to the building. That way you know what it is. It's the flag of that state, or it wouldn't be in front of that building. Why'd you put an Arkansas flag in front of your? Yes.
Because they're a state seal, how on earth are they sewn early on? I can see these are printed.
So the question is, early on, this is printed, but early on, how were these sewn? Well, when I dig back into historical flag collections, and probably the most important was the Utah flag, because for 85 years, the Utah flag was wrong. Wrong. It was wrong. I mean, it was flat out wrong. If we have time tomorrow, I'll bring up an image and show you that. So finally, 2 vexillologists in Salt Lake City convinced the legislature to correct it. Well, when I went out to the Mormon Library Museum to do some research, and I was in a vexillology meeting, we looked at the original Utah flag. It's hand embroidered. It is a work of art. It has appliques and embroidery. So the applique is actually embroidered in place, and then the lettering is all embroidered. So you don't fly these flags. So when we started flying flags, they had to come up with another way. So a lot of the early flags were hand painted. So when you hand paint on silk or rayon or any material, eventually that paint's going to flake off. And different paints weather differently, so they'll turn colors. Then we came up with silk printing, which is a multi-print process. Then we came up with aniline dyes, and this is an aniline dyed flag, which it goes through. I mean, it's the same on the back side, it's just reverse.
I was just curious. How
Yeah.
this started.
So when I talked to people in England about our flag museum, which happened early on, back in 2003 or 2004, we got international attention as our museum, being the only house of flag museum in America. So the British flag geeks contacted me and said, how did you do this? How did you get the public to support a museum? We're a nonprofit organization, no paid staff, thrive on donations only, donations paid the bills. So we talked about it. He said, the Brits are different. He said, you colonials. He said, you colonials have a thing for flags that we don't have. You use flags, you display flags, you fly flags at your homes, on your cars, in your pickup trucks, whatever. We don't do that. So they couldn't really get a flag museum going over there because it doesn't have the same kind of a draw as flags here. So flags became popular, well, became common during war years because we're sending our troops off to war. Flags also served a purpose for the Pan Am exhibition, world fairs and events like that. So they're temporary use. So we didn't embroider them, we made them as quickly as possible. We have examples of early presidential flags that were painted on board ship. They're called field expedient flags that, oh my word, President Truman's coming here. We don't have a presidential flag. We got to make something. Hey, Charlie, whip something out, make it look like a presidential flag. And they would paint it within, a day to look like the president's flag. And I've seen some of those in the museums. They don't hold up very well. So with modern flag printing techniques, we get things like this.
In what year did Michigan adopt that as their state flag?
1911,
Okay, so it was after both peninsulas were now
Oh, yeah.
part of the state.
right.
Okay,
So 1911, we adopted it. So we became a state in what, 1837? 1837, became a state. I didn't learn history in school. I learned history by studying flags. And it's, if you want to learn something, teach it. So as I teach people about flags, I learn history. And I learned state history by talking about this. And our family moved here in 1837, and well, that was statehood. And the flag didn't come along till 1911. So, and there's stories about the flag. Some of the stories about the flag say we adopted this from a Canadian logo, something about, I forget what that was. I don't pay attention to Canada. But they got their own museum. I got their own museum. The Hudson Bay Company has a logo similar to this, but in my research, that logo didn't happen until the 1970s. This was 1911. So this may be a unique design that the Hudson Bay Company copied from us. So I don't know. Canadians are like that. No, they're not. I work with a lot of Canadians. So, flags have stories to tell, and some are interesting and some are kind of crazy. But that's the segment on the flag of the United States. I segued into the Ohio and Michigan flags to just share with you there are 49 state flags and one pennant. I'm going to segue into the presidential flags if there's no quick questions. Okay.
My job.
I was just wondering if I grew up in Alaska and it was very vivid to us, our state flag, and they talked about it in school, grade
Yeah,
school, because I was 5.
Right.
We
Yeah.
became a state. But is it common for most states to teach their state history and flag history when they're little children in grade school, or is that
I
passing
think
by
it's
the way?
common. I think it's common.
Just curious.
But does it stick? I don't know. But the Alaska flag was designed by a school student.
Oh, yeah.
It was a student project. So yeah, we're going to teach it to kids because learn from how our state flag came to being.
And the song.
So,
Sang the song.
yeah. And I don't know the song, but yeah. Very good. Okay. Yes.
Former 4th grade teacher, and we did teach Michigan history and the flag. Yeah.
Yeah. So a former 4th grade teacher. Does that happen today? I don't know if that happens today. I don't know. We have homeschoolers come through the museum more than we have public schoolers. And the homeschoolers will read the Latin on the flags. And I don't think we teach Latin in the public schools much anymore, but the homeschoolers, some of them are learning Latin so they can read the flags, and other things, but that's kind of cool. Okay, this is a presidential limousine flag. This is an Obama era flag. So it's a double-sided flag. I talked about a flag made like a bag. It's actually 2 flags sewn together. But where did that come from? And this part, by the way, that's a shot of inside our museum. That's looking down the first corridor of the Revolutionary War era. So we've got 4 rooms in there, a complete classroom upstairs, a library and all that stuff. But that's how we display our flags. My favorite era is the Revolutionary War because the flags tell a story about the culture, about society, about what people were thinking in that time. But the presidential flags, this is the first ever exhibit, first in history, of the Eisenhower Oval Office flags. This took a year to curate this. Now, I'm a tech guy. I'm a mechanic, a machinist, working on cars, manufacturing plants, mines, and stuff like that. So learning to curate a collection like this was a steep learning curve. So the far left flag is the 48-star flag set that was in Eisenhower's Oval Office. The middle flag is the 49-star flag set from the Eisenhower Oval Office. The 50-star set is on the far right. The first two sets we borrowed from a private collector. The third set I had to borrow from the Presidential Eisenhower Museum and Library, which meant multiple trips out there convincing that we're real deal, getting approval of the National Archives and Records Administration to take their property and display it in our museum, armed guards, lots of insurance. There's $2 million worth of flags there. So we had 1,000 people through there in 4 days. 1,000 people in 4 days. We had flag class. We talked about the flags, how they're made, the significance of the 48 Truman era to the Eisenhower era, to Alaska, to Hawaii. From that exhibit, I started chewing a piece of gum that kept getting bigger and bigger the more I chewed it. And this so far is my manuscript on the history of the president's flag in the United States of America. This has never been written before. Never been written. So this is a product, and the genealogy chart that's in your handout here is the best way to summarize it. That's a genealogy from top to bottom. So I have spent time in the Eisenhower Library Museum, working with curators, directors, and the National Archives and Records Administration. The FDR Library Museum, Reagan, Nixon. I borrowed images from Gerald Ford Museum. The Kennedy Museum we worked with, they thought they had the Kennedy flag, but they don't. We told them it's been sold twice at auction for $500,000. You can't have it. And there's a story about the Kennedy flag that I may not have time today to get into. But when we look at what my research has uncovered, this is a typical presidential flag. This is the 48-star, the actual 48-star flag from Eisenhower's office. The fringe, sorry, I'm wandering too far. The fringe is gold and silver metallic bullion fringe. So they make a silk thread, a yellow silk thread, and they wrap a gold filament around that yellow silk thread. Around a white silk thread is a silver filament. They twist those threads into a string. They turn it into a U shape and tie knots, and then they fringe the ends. And then they sew it all together. They sew it all together in a strip like this, then they attach it to the flag. So that's the 48-star. That's the 49-star. So, and it's the same design, except there's one more star. I'm not going to wander that far. So I can tell it's a 49, not by counting them, but by where the tail points to a gap here. On the 48 and 50, it points to a star. This points to a gap. And here's the 50. So this is what's called mid-century flag embroidery. So it takes 900 hours to embroider one of these flags. They're hand embroidered. And I'll show you pictures as we go through this. This is a close-up shot of the detail. And if you look closely, you can see the embroidery stitches. When Deb and I visited the flag room and met the ladies who do this, my grandmothers were embroiderers. My mother was an embroiderer. You see knots and loose ends, not in these flags. There's no knots and no loose ends anywhere. They don't see the backside of the flag until they're done. And I'll show you pictures of how that happens. But look in the eagle's eye. This is what fired me up about the presidential flag. There's a glint in the eagle's eye. See that V? There's two stitches that make that glint in the eagle's eye. That is attention to detail. These flag ladies that embroider this are meticulous. In Northeast Philadelphia, there's a Navy installation there, not on the river, but a Navy installation Northeast Philadelphia. They're back in there, they're way back in there in what's called the flag room, and it's not open to the public. Pardon me? Civil servants, yeah. So Congress passed an act a number of years ago that said presidential flags will always be made in the United States of America, always with United States of America materials. And they've been made the same way for over 100 years. The embroidery techniques have changed as we saw when we met up with the flag ladies, which was a very interesting visit, and I'll show you that. But this is what really got me interested in the president's flags. When I saw this on the Eisenhower flags in our museum, I saw the glint. In the 48 star flag, the 49 star flag, and the 50 star flag were identical. Identical. So talk about meticulous. So this is the genealogy, not on the paper, but on a wall in our museum that shows each of the flags as they evolved. And I'll show you some of the pieces. So this is the 1914 presidential flag. It's a small bunting flag. It's the actual flag that's in the Quartermaster Museum. Now, the Quartermaster Museum at Fort Lee, Virginia, has one of the largest collections of unused, unissued presidential flags. I think the earliest one is 1903. And they're in drawers. They're in storage. They don't display them. So what's interesting about my research, I get to go to places like that and look at stuff that people can't see. And I'm amazed at this. So when we look at the next one, look at closer, it's tagged with the tag of where it was made, the Philadelphia Quartermaster Depot, 1914. It's made to 2 specifications written on there. That tag is attached with a piece of government red tape. That is official government red tape. They historically used it to bind documents. It's a cotton tape. They use it to attach tags to stuff that's government issued, government made in the Quartermaster Depot, and it's a wax seal with a Quartermaster logo on it. So I have seen and touched government red tape. I know it exists. We've all experienced it, but to see it and touch it is another thing. Yeah. So Woodrow Wilson in 1914 said, "I'm confused," because the Army had a red flag for the president. When the president came to an Army post, they'd fly the scarlet presidential flag. When the president went to a Navy vessel, the Navy would fly a blue presidential flag. Okay. So this is the Navy's, and I'm going to say this is the 1882 version of the Navy flag. So it's a white eagle. We don't have white eagles, but they did this in 1882. In 1901, when the Army was forced by Teddy Roosevelt to come up with a flag for the president that was blue, the Navy said, "Okay, but there's a mistake in the Navy's flag." I have a picture of this flag, a huge naval flag, 1882 naval flag, hanging in the East Room in the White House in 1903 with this same mistake. And the mistake is a heraldry mistake. In heraldry, you don't have a color against a color. This stripe should be white. But when the Navy made this flag, they designed it like our flag, our national flag. It starts and ends with a red stripe. In heraldry, you don't do that. In heraldry, it begins with a white stripe. Because in heraldry, you reproduce things in black and white. In documents, it's not all color. So you would texture the colored ones, and you would not texture the white ones. So that's heraldry principle. So the press made a big deal about it, the Navy made a mistake in their flag, and the Army pointed it out to them because Teddy Roosevelt said the Army needs to get a new flag. Well, the Army said, "Okay, we'll get one, but and told the story about the Navy. So this was the mistaken Navy flag that they had from 1882 to 1901. By 1914, Woodrow Wilson said, the Army still has a scarlet flag. And I said, "No, we don't." "Yes, you do. I saw it." "Read the specifications, sir. A flag is a flag and a color is a color. A flag is a banner that we can take in the field. A color has fringe. The specifications for the Army color is scarlet with a gold fringe. The specification for an Army flag for the president is blue. You didn't tell us we had to change our color. You said change the flag." Whoa. Well, Woodrow Wilson said that's got to stop. we have to design a flag for the president, not a military flag, but a flag for the president. So this is, I like this picture because it's got some complicit people in here. So Woodrow Wilson, the guy in front at Flag Day. In the back, that's FDR. That's a 20-year-old, 21-year-old Franklin Delano Roosevelt sitting behind somebody who's picking their nose. So, so FDR was recruited to design the new president's flag for the Woodrow Wilson administration, to come up with the presidential flag. So he worked with another naval officer. He was an assistant naval secretary. He worked with Byron McCandless to design the new president's flag, which is this. So this is an actual photograph in the Quartermaster Museum of an unused, unissued, authentic 1916 Woodrow Wilson presidential flag. This is the real deal. Never been displayed.
The eagle is facing a different way.
I know. So hold that thought. No, it doesn't. It's a sorry looking eagle compared to today's flag. So anyway, work with me on this. This is Woodrow Wilson's flag, designed by Byron McCandless and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Hold that thought. The significance of the president's flag, I'm going to wander. The presidential coat of arms has 13 olive leaves, 13 olive fruits, 13 arrows of war, olive branch apiece, arrows of war, 13 arrows of war, 13 stripes. Notice how it starts with a white, ends with a white, 13 stripes, 13 stars up above. There are two groups, 13 stars, 9 and 4. Why 9 and 4? Historically significant. The Constitution of the United States of America became the law of the land when 9 states ratified it. The other 4 did not have to ratify it because it would be the law of the land. Eventually, the other 4 did ratify it. 9 and 4. Wandering again. There's 13 cloud puffs. Why cloud puffs? Think puffy clouds. The flag of the United States shall be 13 alternating red and white stripes with 13 stars on a blue field representing a new constellation. Where's the constellation? Up through the clouds. So that's the significance of the cloud puffs. The rays, those are rays going up to the stars, to the constellation. Question?
Yeah, quick question. Why did only 9 states have to ratify?
Because that was the Congress specified. 2/3 of the states had to ratify any amendment.
Not the majority.
Yeah, not a majority. So it's 2/3. So that's the 9 states. That's why I asked earlier if there's any historians in here. I didn't make that one up. Thank you. So the cloud puffs represent the new constellation, which is up there. So are those stars coming down or are they going up? We don't know. But anyway, that's considered the presidential coat of arms. The presidential seal was made after that. Basically, that is a presidential seal, coat of arms, on a blanket with 4 stars. So this is the FDR from the FDR Museum. And again, the eagle's facing backwards. So from heraldry, a device on a flag should face the direction of travel. Why is the eagle looking over his back? The device should face the direction of travel. This is facing backwards. Well, FDR, and I'll tell you the rest of that story. FDR wrote a memo to the Secretary of War and the Secretary of Navy and said, basically, I think I'm outranked by our new 5-star generals and our 5-star fleet admirals. Because, let me back up, I'll come back to this. 4 stars, okay? So in December of 44, Congress approved 4 5-star generals and 5-star fleet admirals. FDR wrote the memo in March 12th, 1945. I found this in the archives at the Truman Library. He passed away on April 12th, 1945, shortly after he wrote this memo. The responses to FDR over that memo, and these presidential memos were little pieces of paper like this, typed on a typewriter. The response from the Secretary of War and the Secretary of Navy was, nah, you're a civilian. You're the commander-in-chief, but you're a civilian. You're not a military officer. You are not outranked. You are the commander-in-chief. You outrank them, regardless of the number of stars. But it planted a seed in the White House staff. So when Truman became president after FDR's death, behind the scenes were these people, all these people who had heard FDR say, I think I'm outranked. They picked up that torch and carried it. So I've highlighted these guys because these Byron McCandless, George Elsey, and Arthur Dubois are the leaders of the redesign in 1945. This happened very quickly. 1945, Truman was coming back from the Potsdam Conference. So that's when he learned about the bombs were ready to drop, to which Truman said, what bombs? So the person who took the cable to Truman is named George Elsey. George Elsey was the assistant naval aide in the map room. Now the map room in the White House is sort of the secret code room. That's where all the secret stuff is planned in the map room, right in the White House. George Elsey was at that time about 21 years old, working for FDR, but Truman kept him on board. So the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Truman came back, business went on as usual as could be at the end of World War II. But behind the scenes, these guys were working on the new flag. So what happened is there were many flag designs, and down in the lower right-hand corner of your handout of the genealogy, you'll see several sketches. So when I was in the Truman Library going through boxes and archives, I ran across these original renderings done in September 1945 of what the presidential flag could look like. So these are designs. Notice how the eagle is a natural colored eagle. It's facing the direction of travel, which makes sense. That was recommended by Arthur Dubois. Arthur Dubois was with the Institute of Heraldry. And Arthur Dubois was basically in charge of all military medals and regalia and all that stuff. And he said, now's our chance to correct this funky white eagle that we don't have and to face it the right direction. So he called a natural colored eagle. Truman said, I want 48 stars around there. Arthur Dubois said, no, because you have to change it when we get new states. So Truman said, so? I mean, this is the buck stops here president. And he said, that's going to be stars around there. So Arthur Dubois said, okay, this is what I suggest. So Truman, let me back up. Truman said, you know, the power of the atomic bomb is amazing. It ended World War II in the Pacific theater. I want to have lightning bolts coming out of those arrows to indicate the significance of the atomic bomb. Politically correct? No, but this is Truman. Okay. He tells a story about, you know, in one speech, he referred to something as manure. And some of the reporters said, well, you shouldn't use that in public. He said, it's taken me years for Best to convince me not to say the other word instead of manure. This horse manure. But anyway, it's Truman. So Truman wanted lightning bolts coming out of the arrows. So the Institute of Heraldry did several renderings. They did 3 renderings of different lightning bolts coming out of the end of the arrows of war. You're shaking your head and I'm thinking, oh, what's this? So these were taken to Truman. These were the actual shape. So what happened was, this is a photograph of the actual life-size limousine flag, the rendering that I found in a box in the Truman archives. And they made those so they could place them over here and say, this, Mr. Truman, sir, this is what that would look like. So they made this little thing so you could overlay it and say, that's what it would look like with those lightning bolts coming out of the arrows. But our presidential flag today does not have lightning bolts coming out of the arrows. So the research continues. I ran across written proof, evidence in a memo where Truman wanted lightning bolts. George Elsey wrote the memo to Arthur Dubois. Arthur Dubois wrote back and said, no. George Elsey said, the president wants it, do it. So they did 3 versions. This is George Elsey. George Elsey's the tall kid here. coming back from Potsdam Conference in 1945. He's a young kid. Nowhere in my research could I find out why, when Truman signed the executive order for the new president's flag, there were no lightning bolts coming out of the arrows. Could find no record of that. So I was talking to the director of the Truman Library Museum, and he said, well, why didn't you talk to George Elsey? This is the guy that served under FDR and Harry Truman, and this was in 2013. Whoa, okay, 10 minutes. So I said, I'd love to talk to him. So, and I had presented a paper on this story at a Flag Geek conference, Vexillological conference. So the director forwarded to George Elsey. George called me and he said, Mr. Williams, I understand you're writing a book on the history of the president's flag. And he said, I too have written in my autobiography about what my involvement was on bringing the current presidential flag to fruition. And I said, I read your autobiography. It's fascinating. But I have one question. He said, well, what would that be? I said, what happened to the lightning bolts? There was a long silence on the phone. He said, where in the hell did you hear about that? I said, I found your memo misfiled in Harry Vaughn's boxes in the Truman Library. All the records in your box didn't speak of that, except all your records didn't have that. They were in Harry Vaughn's box, misfiled. So I found the memos. I got a copy of the memo. But what happened? There's no lightning bolts. He said, that's a story. He said, everybody in the White House thought this is bad. It's the emperor has no clothes story. Who's going to tell Harry Truman that this is a stupid idea? But I said, somebody had to. They're not there. He said, Charlie Ross. Charlie Ross was Harry Truman's press secretary. Charlie Ross went to school with Harry and Bess Truman, high school, best friends. Charlie Ross went to Harry Truman and said, Harry, it's a damn fool idea. Don't do it. End of story. So I said, Mr. Elsey, can I quote you in my book? He said, by all means. He said, that tells the rest of the story. We had a Paul Harvey moment. That's the rest of the story. Question?
My question is, when I saw the lightning bolt, I thought of Germany. I don't know if that would be better symbols for what the
Oh.
SS or something.
Well, you see, Truman as a vice president was not that involved in World War II. He was sort of a tag-along vice president. When you read the chronicle of that era, Truman wasn't really involved in discussions with FDR. So again, flags are teaching me history that I didn't learn in school. So there was not much conversation about the bombs with Harry Truman involved. So, yeah. So Truman's big involvement was the Potsdam Conference. That was the first big step that he made. Yeah, I'm glad that he didn't put lightning bolts in there. Yeah. So we got 7 minutes. So there's the 48 star flag, no lightning bolts. Yay. Thank you, Charlie Ross. This is the flag room in the 1950s of the ladies embroidering flags. It looks like a sweatshop, but they're hand embroidering flags on quilting frames. It's a double-handed embroidery technique. So the hand down below makes the identical stitch on the bottom side coming up. It's a double-handed technique. And you can see those two ladies working there on that one. So this is the flag room today. This is the flag room up in Northeast Philadelphia. So it's not a sweatshop, but they have the same wooden sawhorses and the same quilting frames you saw in the 1950 picture. So
Wait, before you go,
before I go,
what did you have to do to get in there?
oh, just short of an act of Congress. But because my references were the director of the Truman Library Museum, the Nixon, the Reagan, the Quartermaster Museum, I had credentials. So the question was, can I bring a camera in? That flipped them out. So the guards at the gate said, no cameras allowed. I had to have somebody from the room come say, he's with us. The camera's fine. Don't worry about it. No pictures outside of the flag room. But it was tricky. We've made 2 trips there.
Why?
Why? It's a naval installation.
Yeah, but you're not
It's a naval base. Don't even go there. It's a flag room. It's not a weapon, but I'm on a naval base, a naval site, no cameras. So, so this is Miss Rowena Lee. She has since retired since I met with her. This was in 2013. I was up there and she's showing me one stitch at a time how she embroiders it. The photograph there is the best flag that she made and details of it so she can replicate her stitches, the lengths, the angles, the colors of the silk thread, the embroidery floss. But they're working on one portion of that flag. Don't see the backside until it's done. And I've seen them flip it over and there's no knots, no loose ends. So she's showing me some of the details. They published an article in their local newsletter about my flag visit. So they got local press about this visit too. So in 2018, Deb and I and two of our friends that own the 48 and 49 star flag made another pilgrimage up there to the flag room to show the flag ladies what the mid-century embroidery looked like compared to the current style. So these flag ladies were all over these flags. So Deb's in the background supervising. So my wife Deb is up there. Donna Pruitt, she and her husband own these presidential flags. But the flag ladies had a ball looking at these. They showed us how they go from tracing the pattern onto the rayon panel, how they trace it. So the first time I was up there in 2013, Rowena Lee said, sign the flag, sign the flag. I said, what? She gave me a white textile pen. She said, write your name on the flag. So underneath the flag that was in the Oval Office in the previous administration for 4 years is my signature. I have a photograph to prove it. So when we were up there in 2018, the same thing, sign the flag. So Deb and I both got to sign the flag. So in the current Oval Office is a flag with our signatures underneath the applique that says E Pluribus Unum. Yay. 4.
Every 4 years.
Yes, but there's a story. How many flags does the flag room make? 4 Oval Office flag. Oval Office flag is 5.5 feet by 4.5 feet. It's big. It's a special fringe. They make 4 for the Oval Office, for the Cabinet Room, for the private office, and for the private library, the Oval Library and the residence. 4. They make what's called travelers. Now the travelers have a synthetic fringe. They're a smaller flag, and those are the flags that the Secret Service schleps around the world. In the Rose Garden, you don't see the presidential flags because they're on a pole 10 feet tall and they're not very stable. So they're indoor, those big ones. So the travelers, they make a lot more travelers. In fact, they've gone to some machine embroidery on the travelers, but the Oval Office flags, they make 4. So yes, this is not clicking. Yes, does the president receive one when he leaves office? It ends up in the Presidential Library and Museum. So the flags from the Oval Office. Now there's mysteries that happen because when I visit these museums, there's usually 2. What happens to the other 2? We don't know. They disappear. Souvenirs, I don't know. But I estimate that it costs $22,000 to make one of these flags. Civil service rates.
At least one of the other 2 go to National Archives.
Yes, well, National Archives. Okay, so the National Archives sends those to the museums.
They keep one.
Where do they keep it?
They keep it, I'm trying to remember.
National Archives keeps one of the 2 flags. So they have a huge warehouse full of stuff that they don't allow to the museums.
That's right.
Okay,
And that's where they are. And they're not at National Archives on Constitution. They're in a warehouse and but they are preserved with the usual nitrogen, blah, blah,
Okay.
blah stuff.
interesting, yeah. That's the 2 minutes. Okay, I got a 2-minute warning. Okay, so they're showing us how they sew the flags. Again, here's the 1950s quilting frames and how they adjust it. Because when you embroider it, the flag is actually shrinking. It's moving, so they have to be able to keep the tension on, but adjust it. They're showing how they sew the fringe on. I've been asked by a lot of museums and pawnbrokers and auctioneers, is this flag real? And one of the 10 things I look for is the corner of the fringe. It should be a square corner. A lot of the fakes have a pie plate corner. It's a big round because it's hard to bend this in a square corner. So the flag lady said, this is how we make a corner. So we documented that for the book. Perfect square corners. And there's the flag ladies. So they came in on vacation, off of vacation to be with us. They came in to see the flags, and they're holding this book in front of them, this manuscript. So that's the story of the presidential flags. Quick questions? Quick, yes.
This is related to flags in general. And I noticed the last time I was watching the inauguration that when there was the American flag and then, but then there were all these other flags that they were carrying in. Are those like armed forces flags?
Armed forces
I
flags.
just wondered
Armed
what they
forces
were.
flags. Armed forces flags. And they'll have battle honor banner pennants on them. Yeah. So yeah, that's the flags, the military flags. Yeah.
And
Other quick questions? Quick. No quick questions. Okay,
We
we're
are
done.
at
Okay,
11.
just let me make a point, and that is we meet tomorrow again. Usually these classes are a week apart, but we're meeting again tomorrow here. So
So tomorrow, we're going to look at Revolutionary War flags and the Civil War era flags. So in same time, yeah. And if
Same
you have more
place, yep.
questions left over from today, we can ask them, or you can hang around here while I pack up flags. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming, everybody.